In this video, I want to talk about the qualifications you need to have and meet to be able to become a student pilot and then a sport pilot, and then the requirements and exams you need to take and pass to be able to become a sport pilot. So first off, let's talk about this is from FAR 61.83, eligibility for student pilots. In order to be eligible for a student pilot certificate, a person must hold a valid U.S. driver's license or a first, second, or third class medical certificate. So, as many of you probably know, the reason, or maybe it's the reason you became or are trying to become a sport pilot, is because you don't require a first, second, or third class medical certificate. All you need is a valid U.S. driver's license in lieu of that first, second, or third class medical certificate. But you still can have either or, right? So you have to have one of those. You have to be at least 16 years old, and you have to be able to read, write, or speak English. All right, now let's talk about aeronautical experience. So this is the aeronautical experience required for you to obtain in order for you to become a sport pilot or be eligible for that final check ride. So this is from FAR 61.313. In order to receive a sport pilot certificate, a person must have the following minimum numbers of flight hours in a light sport aircraft: 20 hours minimum total flight time, 15 hours of dual flight time with a flight instructor, 2 hours of which are cross-country flight, with 10 total takeoffs and landings to a full stop at an airport involving flight in a traffic pattern. So let's just summarize this. You need 20 total hours of flight time to become a sport pilot. 15 of that has to be dual time with a flight instructor. And then under that 15 hours, 2 of those have to be cross-country flight with your instructor. And you have to have 10 total takeoffs and landings with your instructor to a full stop at an airport involving a traffic pattern. Then you also have to have 2 hours of that 15 hours of dual time, which are within the last 60 days of the practical test in preparation for that test. So the FAA wants to ensure that you are flying with your instructor and preparing for that check ride test. They don't want to have DPEs going out doing a bunch of check rides for students that are unprepared. All right. On top of all that, you have to have 5 hours of solo flight. So of that 20 total, 5 of those have to be solo. With one solo cross country that must be at least 75 nautical miles total distance, with full stop landings at 2 different points where one of the segments is at least 25 nautical miles straight line distance between takeoff and landing. So you have to go on a solo cross country flight that is a total of 75 nautical miles in total distance. You have to fly a total of at least 75 nautical miles. You have to have 2 full stop landings at 2 different points. So 2 different locations, like airports along the way. And one of those segments, so between one airport and the other airport, it has to be at least 25 nautical miles straight line distance between your takeoff and your landing. So that is your one solo cross country flight that you have to have within these 5 hours of solo flight. All right, let's talk about some other requirements to become sport pilot. And these are endorsements and exams. So you've gotten all your, let's say you've gotten all your minimum required hours. So you have the aeronautical experience, you have that all in your logbook, but that's not all you need to become a sport pilot. What else do you need? Well, on top of the minimum flight experience to become a sport pilot, a person must also receive a logbook endorsement from an instructor who conducted the training or reviewed the home study for the pilot's aeronautical knowledge areas listed in 61.309 and certified the pilot is prepared for the knowledge test. So you have to receive an endorsement for the knowledge test from an instructor who basically ensures the FAA that, yes, they know that you have studied and you are ready for this knowledge test. Then you have to pass the required knowledge test. That we often call that the FAA written exam. And then you have to receive a logbook endorsement from an instructor who conducted the training in areas of operation listed in 61.309 and 61.311 and certified the pilots prepared for the check ride. So just like a instructor certified that you've studied and you're ready for the knowledge test, they have to do the training with you that we already talked about. All that aeronautical experience, the 20 total hours, 15 dual with your instructor, 5 solo. They have to do that training with you, and they have to certify through an endorsement that you are ready for the practical test. So sometimes, right, even though you might have the minimum hour requirements, Your instructor might not think you are quite ready because maybe you're not safely landing, or you might, some parts of your flying aren't quite ready. That's why the vast majority or the average pilots take longer than the minimum hours required to become a pilot. All right, and then of course you got to pass the final practical check ride exam. It's going to consist of an oral exam and then a practical flight exam. Here's a good picture of a student and an instructor shaking hands after a successful check ride.